This is the Steele Report.
This week on the Steele Report, we're going to talk to an area attorney who represented a family who lost a loved one in an officer-involved shooting, which brought a huge settlement in a federal lawsuit. Our show begins right now.
Now from KWWL, this is the Steele Report.
Hey, hey! Hey, stop it!
God, my kid!
Get your dog!
She's on you? You shoot her?
Did I? Oh my God. Oh my God. 38 shots fired.
Go, Sammy! You shot her!
Did I really?
You shot her!
Oh my God. Get your dog.
Right there, you are watching police body cam video of a Burlington, Iowa officer-involved shooting which killed an Iowa mother of two young children. Today on the Steele Report program, we're going to take a closer look at this very interesting case and the quite lengthy battle to get the City of Burlington and law enforcement to release the body cam video so that Iowa taxpayers can see exactly what happened in this obvious tragedy. So, welcome to this week's edition of the Steele Report with my guest, Cedar Rapids attorney David O'Brien. And Mr. O'Brien is a member of an organization called the Iowa Lawyers, which is known as the Iowa Association of Justice, made up entirely of trial lawyers. And this organization was formerly known as the Iowa Trial Lawyers Association. Mr. O'Brien, you represented the family in this tragedy, and we want to show a couple of pictures here. Autumn Steele of Burlington, Iowa. I want to mention I'm no relation to this family as far as I know, spelled the same. She was a 34-year-old mother of her two young sons there, and she was accidentally shot to death by a Burlington officer on the morning of January 6, 2015 in a Burlington neighborhood. Here she is, a photograph with her mother, Gina Colbert. So this was certainly an immense tragedy and a case which raised a lot of questions about several issues: police training, demeanor at the scene, body cameras, the actions of officers, and also how reports can be changed, and those changes might go unchallenged without the effort of concerned families representing family members. Also the case, in this particular case, efforts of the news media, and particularly the very highly respected Burlington Hawkeye newspaper in Southeast Iowa. So, Mr. O'Brien, thanks, Dave, for coming on the show. I really appreciate that. What about this case, really, though, did you want people to know about? This goes back to 2015, and this effort took about 3 years just to get that body cam video released to the public so they could kind of get a better idea of exactly what happened. What do you want people to know about this particular case and some of the lessons learned for other Iowa departments around the state?
Well, just watching that video, I've of course seen it hundreds of times as I prepared this case, but it's difficult to watch in any event, regardless of how many times you've seen it. And we want to make sure is that it just doesn't happen again. And we don't do that if we don't hold police officers accountable when they act recklessly like this particular officer did at that time. And that's why we need to have it publicized. That's why this body cam video should have been released right away. It would have been a lot, people would be a lot safer if that had happened.
And in your opinion, and you did go to trial, and this was a federal case, and let's get real quickly, why was this filed as a federal lawsuit for the family instead of at the state level, first of all?
Well, we definitely filed a constitutional action alleging a violation of the Fourth Amendment, unreasonable seizure, which is use of excessive force. It was filed in federal court because it was we included a federal constitutional claim. We also included an Iowa constitutional claim as well, but that the federal courts had pendant jurisdiction for that. We ended up settling right before trial, so we didn't actually have a jury verdict. We ended up with a settlement, and I chose that venue because it gives us a broader group of people. All this happened down in southeast Iowa, and so the case would have been tried in Davenport with people from all areas of southeast Iowa, as opposed to if you file it where the incident happened right in Burlington, you might just get a lot of concerned citizens from Burlington on the jury, and they might be concerned about taxes going up and those kinds of things. So I like the broader jury pool.
So in the end, the Freedom of Information Council in Iowa got involved with the Burlington Hawkeye newspaper and others trying to get this video released, because a lot of us in the media feel that this is a body cam is a thing to protect the officers as well as the innocent citizens. And why do you think, in listening to what they argued, why did they fight this so hard, do you think?
Well, they fought it so hard because it's just horrible to watch, and it shows their officer acting recklessly and admitting that he acted recklessly. You didn't roll this tape, and I'm sure you won't show the unedited version, but he uses a swear word and says, "I'm going to prison."
Yes, yeah, right.
And that, you know, an absolute admission of wrongdoing, of reckless conduct, and they didn't want the people to see that. So they did everything they could to keep this from coming out. They not only did that, they exaggerated his injuries, claiming he had been bitten several times. He wasn't even bitten once. And we just had to dig in and file a lawsuit and get going with that. But thank goodness for the Freedom of Information Council. They fought this on the state open records law side, and I wasn't directly involved with that. I was able to get this information as a result of discovery in the federal lawsuit. The downside of that is we had to sign a confidentiality agreement so we couldn't make it public. But of course, I was privy to it, the family was privy to it, but we couldn't talk about it until the case got to trial. So it ended up being released as a result of federal Judge Gritzner, who did a great job, and said this needs to be public once the city came in and said, we want to file a motion for summary judgment asking you to dismiss this case. And they provided all this evidence, and now it's public record.
Yeah, I mean, it was many, many years ago, but federal court Judge James Gritzner was actually an investigative reporter here at KWWL a long time ago. So he understands the significance of disclosure and being as transparent as possible. Of course, he's been a federal court judge now for many, many years. But let's back up a little bit. You said the officer claimed that he was bitten. So there was a dog involved in this. And let's just back up a little bit. This was a domestic involvement between husband and wife who had some rocky issues, it looks like. So what happened on that morning that caused the officers to be called to the scene in the first place?
Well, very volatile relationship between Gabe and Autumn. Very passionate. It was clear to me from checking out the case and getting to know people that knew them that they loved each other very much, but they also had some just angry fights.
One of those
arguments.
Love-hate relationships that we see a lot of times, and officers are called to the scene in these types of very volatile and unpredictable situations.
That's true. That is true, and she had been arrested the day before because she was hitting on Gabe. Now, Gabe's a big 6'2" Army vet, under fire in Afghanistan, I believe 3 tours. So he can take care of himself, but he would never hit a woman. And so he would just let her hit him, and eventually, because he didn't want his son to see his mother hitting him without having any consequences, he called the police. And they arrested her the day before. And she had just been released. She wasn't thinking rationally. She went right back to the house. All she wanted to do was get her son and leave. But of course, Gabe wasn't going to let her do that. And it spilled out onto the front lawn. The dog came out and was jumping around. You know, if you think about this from the dog's perspective, it's kind of a playful, and an officer's running over. Well, you all know how dogs react.
And that's what the witnesses said, right?
Yeah, the dog was acting playfully, running around, jumping. The officer ran over, and the dog, no doubt about it, the dog did jump up on him. And that's the only thing he says in the video about contact with the dog was the dog jumped on him one time. Then they later turned that into a bite, even though there was no evidence of a bite. And then they even later claimed there were multiple bites, and that they put a news release out, Ron, saying that he was in the hospital being treated for non-life-threatening injuries. I mean, he didn't even have anything he needed to put a Band-Aid on. So they were intentionally misleading the public about the justification they were using for use of deadly force.
So this was a case where the department is trying to protect itself, and that happens from time to time. But the main point you're trying to make is the accountability is such that with this body cam video, from now on, or pretty much every case is going to show exactly what has happened. Let's roll a little bit more of this video, Director Jeff Sandlin. Right now, we'll take a look at this for a few seconds, then we'll come back and talk more about what happened on that morning. And you kind of can see that the video cam obviously is a little bit jumpy, because body cam video is, but watch this and see what you think.
Shot her?
Hey, officer over there on Garfield advising if you got shot.
Dog attacked me. I pulled my gun and shot it, and I hit her. Hold on.
Where were you at?
They were fighting. As soon as I tried to grab her to get her away, the fucking dog jumped on me. My gun.
44, is it okay for the ambulance to come on in?
Yes.
10-4, get him here, Market and Garfield.
Let's go.
Somebody get over here knows what they're doing.
Hustle, guys.
Yeah.
Hustle, hustle. No post.
So we're watching this video here, Dave O'Brien, and he has his gun out, and he has fired,
Honestly, I don't.
and he has lost his gun.
He lost control of the gun while he was shooting. You can see from the body cam video that you showed a little earlier, and the body camera is pinned to his chest. It's actually facing up at the sky when he fires a shot, so he has no idea where he's shooting. Not only were Gabe and Autumn and their son Gunnar in the line of fire, but he could have shot through a house, a window, a car driving by. I mean, anybody within a 6-block radius was potentially a target when you fire haphazardly like that.
So here, as other departments might have followed this case, and I'm sure they did, because Waterloo has had several incidents where they've lost large lawsuits because of actions. And in this particular case, why would an officer have a gun pulled out when you have two suspects? Maybe they're fighting, but they're husband and wife, and there's no weapons involved. Why would that officer draw a weapon at that point?
There's just no justification for it. And I mean, he claimed because the dog attacked him, but the dog, even if the dog was attacking him, you shouldn't be using your gun in that situation. But here's, to go back to a previous question that you asked, here's one of the things that really becomes problematic when you hide this material. When the police investigate themselves, the system doesn't work very well. You know, our criminal and civil justice systems rely on adversarial. Two sides that both have opposing views present each of the evidence that they think is best for their side of the case, and the truth comes out. But when you have the police, who are supposed to be agents of the prosecutors, acting as criminal defense agents, the truth doesn't come out. So Hill was never investigated. What we found out after we got into this case was that he was afraid of dogs, and we had a witness that was going to come testify at trial, and in a previous incident, and he'd only been on the force for a year, in a previous incident he had actually threatened to shoot another dog. And the woman said, who had called the police, said, "You're not going to shoot that dog. I'm going to put him in the house." And he didn't at that time, but he threatened to. Again, in a clearly inappropriate situation. So this was a horrible, reckless situation that was waiting to happen. You know how many people own dogs? And he's still on the force.
So, you know, we know these situations are volatile, but we know also that training becomes such an important element. I mean, you can't predict what's going to happen at a particular time, but the training element here, there seemed to be something lacking, and then the transparency obviously was lacking from the department itself.
Well, the city did do a training, online training after this incident,
okay,
which is good. And even the training that they did online, which we got copies of, I don't know if we'd have got it in at trial, but it showed that he had not acted in accordance to how they were trained at that point in time. I mean, he had other options. First of all, he didn't need to do anything because the dog wasn't viciously attacking him. But even if the dog was attacking him, he could have used his pepper spray, which is a very effective deterrent from an animal. You know what they told me when I asked them why not pepper spray? They said, because you got to hit directly, otherwise it just blows away. As opposed to a gun that you don't have to hit directly. Unbelievable. No pepper spray because it was outside and that was their justification. He has a taser, and his justification for not using his taser is it would have taken him too long because he has to cross draw. The taser's on the left side and the gun's on the right. Well, I mean, you're talking what, a tenth of a second, a couple tenths of a second? Again, it just wasn't a life-threatening situation. He had no business pulling his gun out.
We're going to talk more with attorney Dave O'Brien about this very interesting Burlington case, which was obviously quite a tragedy all the way around. That's coming up in just a moment. Stick around. And welcome back to this week's edition of the Steele Report. My guest is Cedar Rapids attorney Dave O'Brien, representing a family in a Burlington, Iowa shooting case, an officer-involved shooting in which a mother of two was accidentally shot. And Dave, you probably can't be the most popular guy around the state as far as police officers and law enforcement are concerned. And I know that both of us are going to get a lot of reaction negatively that we're against police, and that is absolutely not the case at all. In fact, you were telling me you have tremendous respect, as I do, for law enforcement, but they have to do the job right to protect society and themselves, and accountability and transparency is absolutely paramount to have the people understand that they are being protected by people with high integrity and highly skilled people. And you said you've even gained greater respect for law enforcement because of this case.
This case, and I'm one of the few attorneys in Iowa that specializes in doing these kind of cases, because we don't have very many officers that are out there acting recklessly and are violating people's constitutional rights, and that's a good thing. Yeah, getting involved in these types of cases makes me more respectful of the difficult and at times dangerous jobs police officers perform. And thank goodness 90% or more of them are out there doing it every day without acting recklessly or violating people's constitutional rights. And I have great respect and admiration for them. But it's so important, and to be honest with you, I don't think that I'm probably the favorite person of the police officers that I've sued. But I think other police officers know that this is a part of the system that needs to be checked. You know, we hire police officers, we give them that nice uniform and that utility belt and the gun and the cruiser and all the get-up, and we ask them to go out and enforce society's rules. Mm-hmm. And we need that. And it's a difficult and dangerous job, but they have a rule book they have to follow. And if they don't follow the rule book, we have to hold them accountable. And that's where I come in. And I'm proud to play that role. And if there's nobody holding them accountable when they act wrongfully, then we live in a police state. They can do whatever they want, whenever they want.
Let's back up just a hair. 34-year-old Autumn Steele was the mother involved here, the mother of two and the wife. Her and her husband had been involved in a kind of a love-hate relationship. Police were called that morning back in 2015. Let's quickly show you that video again of what led to the shooting. The dog is involved to a certain extent, jumping up on the officer. Let's watch this video one more time in case you missed it in the first segment.
Hey, hey! Hey, stop it!
God, my kid!
Get your dog!
She shot you? You shoot her?
Did I? Oh my God! Oh my God! 38 shots fired.
The officer is very, very upset. He knows what he's done
really?
is a mistake, and a terrible, fatal mistake. And watching this video, which you've watched probably hundreds of times, you said, what goes through your mind and how that could have been prevented?
I can't escape the thought that if virtually any other law enforcement officer in the entire state of Iowa would have showed up at that scene first, this would not have happened. There was another officer who showed up about 30 seconds later, a little more experienced. We have no reason to believe he had an unusual fear of dogs like Officer Hill. If he had been a little faster to the scene, I don't think this would have happened. It's a tragedy. This doesn't make this particular officer a bad person, no, but it does, in my view, make him unqualified to be a police officer. He acted rashly, he acted recklessly, and he paid no consequence for that other than the city having to pay the civil damages that we were able to obtain in our lawsuit.
Yeah, it's imperative for officers, despite the terrible danger that they're often in, things rapidly changing by the second, that they remain in complete control of their faculties to know exactly the training that has brought them to this point will get them through it. And that happens 99% of the time. If the officer is trained properly, that training will show itself at the scene.
Absolutely. There's no doubt about that. And you know, this was a situation that any officer that was trained properly and acting appropriately wouldn't even have thought of pulling their gun out. It's just, it didn't call for it. The only reason this officer would have been justified in pulling a gun at this place would be if Autumn or Gabe had a gun and went for it. Then you got a different situation, perhaps even a knife, but not a dog jumping at them. Even a dog the dog wasn't biting him, but even if the dog was biting him, you're not justified in using a gun in that situation. You have your other levels of force you can use that we already talked about, the pepper spray, stun gun, so on.
And of course, obviously you can hear Officer Hill's voice in there. He's very, very distraught, having known that this happened and that he was responsible. But now it's too late.
It is. You know, I took his deposition. He didn't strike me as a bad person. I think in other circumstances, he would be a good person to hang out with. But that doesn't make him a good police officer, and it doesn't make what he did here right.
And what happened as far as the county attorney this is Des Moines County where Burlington is located, she ended up leaving office, and there were a lot of questions about the way she handled that case too.
There were. I got involved afterwards, but you know, criminal charges should have been filed. He acted recklessly, and it resulted in the death of an innocent person. And those charges were not filed because she read the law in a way that didn't make any sense to me. And she refused to do what she should have done. And that was one of the reasons we did file the civil lawsuit, because otherwise there were no repercussions at all for this wrongful conduct.
So at least you have some recourse if there are no criminal charges filed, and of course that's not going to bring the person back, but at least the family gets some compensation to help them raise the children, because obviously they're without their mother now. So.
Well, this is a wonderful family. Gabe, Gina, the mother, I mean, they were so diligent. They lost Autumn. They knew she wasn't coming back, but they wanted to make sure it didn't happen to anybody else again. And they fought this tooth and nail, and I'm very, very proud to have represented them. I think it is a lot less likely that officers will engage in this kind of conduct in the future as a result of them not accepting that initial ruling by the county attorney that he did nothing wrong.
All right, we're going to take one more break real quick here with Cedar Rapids attorney Dave O'Brien. And welcome back to our final segment of the Steele Report for this week. Our guest is Cedar Rapids attorney David O'Brien, who represents the Iowa Association of Justice, a member there of many, many Iowa trial lawyers. And the case we're talking about is the case involving 34-year-old Autumn Steele, who was shot to death accidentally in a dispute down in Burlington, Iowa by an officer who had pulled his gun. In fact, I was looking at an editorial, I think it was in the Quad City Times originally, but it said previously sealed court testimony reveals that Officer Hill followed U.S. Department of Justice training available at the time. Had he followed that training, he never would have pulled his weapon in the first place.
Absolutely true. That particular training module that they're referring to said no use of deadly force unless a dog is attacking, has bitten you, and is holding on, gripping a body part and shaking its head. And even then, it wouldn't be justified if there were people in the background. You know, I had an expert witness in this case who the defense attorney asked him, did you ever fire your weapon when you were a police officer? And he said, no, I was with my sergeant when he was shot and killed, though.
Wow. And
the people that shot and killed him were right across the street. And she said, well, what are you talking about? Why didn't you shoot back at him? And he said, because there was a fast food restaurant right behind them that was filled with people, and they were right in the line of fire. I couldn't. I just had to stay cover, and other officers came that had better angles and were able to use their weapons. So, you know, you have to be smart. When you're going to pull that gun out and fire, you gotta figure out what's in the line of fire. You're considered to have aimed at anything that's in the line of fire.
And in this particular case, there was a young child, I believe 3 years old at the time, right in the area. The husband was right there as well. This could have been even, in fact, the dog actually was shot in addition to Ms. Steele. So
the dog was grazed. One of the bullets, I'm pretty confident that it was the second bullet shot killed Autumn. He was falling backward. He lost control of his gun, and I mean, it could have just as easily gone in any direction, but it ended up hitting her, go through and through in her arm and a through and through in her chest, and she bled out.
I'm going to let you make this argument.
Not too distant.
Yeah, I think I can make a pretty good argument here for news media, but I'd like you to make the argument for law enforcement officials watching that why it is so important to be as transparent as possible, and because one bad officer makes all the officers look bad.
Well, that's absolutely right, and these situations can happen. We understand that. But if you're upfront about it and you release this body cam video, this family went through heck dealing with this and not being told what was happening. And they wouldn't even let them look at the video until I got involved and we got the lawsuit filed.
Almost looked like a cover-up, didn't it?
There's no doubt it was a cover-up. They didn't put in their police reports the witness testimony that we've spoken about. I had to go back and actually listen to the video and audio recordings of those witness statements to find out that they said the dog wasn't being aggressive. In the reports, they said the dog was attacking. So they were misleading the public about why this happened. And that's a cover-up. And that's not a good thing. We have to expose that. We can't let them get away with that.
And real quickly, the Iowa Association of Justice, in the final few seconds here, what is your mission? What do you do?
Well, our job is to see that people are held accountable for their wrongful conduct, and that includes police officers when they act like this. We're so proud to work with the media. You know, we gave the Iowa Freedom of Information Council and Mr. Randy Evans an award just yesterday for their work in making sure that this body cam video was publicly released. They were instrumental in that.
Yeah, Randy Evans and other great former journalists are working on some great projects, including what they do with the Iowa Freedom of Information Council, and they're excellent reporters who want the truth revealed. And we know, Dave, that the truth is a very difficult thing to find these days. Absolutely.
It absolutely is. Sometimes you find evidence and it turns out that you don't have a case, but that's okay because the truth came out.
All right. Cedar Rapids attorney David O'Brien, representing the Iowa Association of Justice. Thank you for taking time to talk about this very interesting case. Hopefully a lot of people learned something from this tragedy, and we appreciate you taking the time to talk with us.
It's been my pleasure.
Okay, that's it for this week on the Steele Report. Thanks for watching. We're also online, as always, on KWWL.com.